Welcome to today's live session. If you've ever been trapped on hold listening to that music that feels like emotional damage, then this one is for you. So we're going to be talking about how AI is reinventing the phone call for IT support. That call that used to mean waiting, repeating yourself, and hoping someone picks up before your coffee wears off. We're going to cover how this new generation of voice technology is changing that and making the help desk experience faster, smarter, and dare I say, even actually enjoyable. So my name's Rob. I'm a solutions consultant and joined by the guy who looked at the old IT phone experience and said, yeah, that's broken. We're going to fix that. Saurabh Kumar, co-founder and CEO of Rezolve.ai. Saurabh, great to have you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey Rob, excited to be here. And I think the deepest experience I have in the space is actually being a user and being on hold. And we can all once you've had that experience, you have this burning desire to go and change it and do something better. And that's how Resolve's voice roadmap came about. We've all been there, and we've all been hoping that with the advent of latest AI and technology, this will change. And here we are.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I just want to say that we are live. If you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A and we'll try to get to them before the end of the webinar. Saurabh, before we begin, what was the moment that you truly realized voice support needed a serious upgrade?
Yeah, I used to run service organizations in my past life. And one of the things we realized is how, on one hand, how the user experience was still, I would say, 2 decades old. So it was very like scripted, press one to go here, press two to go there.
Mhm.
And we would often, if you were to sit in those call centers and hear to the voice of the customer, you would get this kind of you would feel that pain right on the other side. And then on the internal side, we also found that these older way of doing things were really inflexible. Anytime you wanted to make a change, you would have to work through a long development process. It was just not easy to be agile and flexible if you wanted to launch a new product and you wanted to have your your telephone system talk about them. It was just not working. So on one hand, we had a lot of like time being wasted, people being on hold, asking the same stuff, and those coming in as tickets to teams. On the other hand, we internally were spending too much money, too much time trying to make it work. And if you begin to combine all of that, we realized that that needed to change. Now, the technology to change it has only become possible, I would say, the way we wanted to do it in the last year, and
Sure.
that's when we started working on it about a year and a half ago.
I wish the credit card companies would catch up, man. I'm so sick and tired of the fraud alerts. I have to go through all them. Yeah. So for years, we've been told that chat, teams, and self-service would replace these phone calls. But when something breaks, people still have that natural instinct to reach for the phone. So let's talk about that. Why does voice refuse to die, even in an AI first world?
I think there's some practical reasons, and then there are some human reasons, right? So let me start with the practical reasons. We have situations where voice is the only channel that makes sense. So, for example, if you're working in your company and your laptop's logged out and you can't really go to your Teams or go to your other internal channels, you have to call in, right? It makes sense. If your
Sure.
device is not powering up, it's completely broken, you have to call in. There's really no other way to do it. So there are practical scenarios when it makes sense. Another one that we often see with our clients is they have a big mobile workforce. People are on the road. They have salespeople or service people who are driving vehicles out there, and they're in a factory or they're in a train station or what have you. All of those are good places to just call in and get support quickly. So that's kind of the practical side of it. There's also a human side that, a voice sometimes allows us to communicate things fast, communicate things effectively, communicate our sense of urgency, describe a more complex issue that maybe sometimes is just not that easy to describe in a form that you're submitting on some self-help site. So there's definitely a more human, more how we want to interact with each other aspect to it. It's also faster in some context. So yeah, given those are two broad categories of things we see.
So traditional support calls can be pretty brutal. You're waiting on hold. You got to spell your email address 3 times, retell your story every time you transfer. It's like Groundhog Day with worse wake up music. And AI is finally changing that. You talk once, it gets understood, it's getting logged, it's getting passed along perfectly. So how does this technology actually eliminate that repetition? So what's happening differently than what's going on in those legacy systems?
Yeah. The first and by the way, to your previous question, some clients we
Mhm.
see 40-50% of tickets are still coming in on voice. So the numbers are non-trivial for many people we work with, right?
Sure.
But to give you a sense of what's different about technology compared to if we've all called into, maybe that order didn't ship and you wanted to get a status on that or what have you. We've all had those experiences, and the traditional experience would be you would call in. It would say, "Hey, are you calling for sales or are you calling for service?
Sure.
Press 2 for service, right? Do you want to speak Spanish? Press 3 if you want to speak Spanish, right?"
Correct. Yeah.
Um, that experience is actually yesterday I called an airline to reschedule a ticket, and all I needed, their reschedule option is like three. They wouldn't let me do it online. Their reschedule option was 3 levels deep in other category. So you had to figure out that you had to get to other to get to reschedule, right? And they had a
Sure.
dead end. If you get into an IVR path that did not have the option you wanted, it would say, "Okay, thank you for calling, goodbye," right? And it would hang up. Terrible experience, right? Point I was trying to make is that's not how humans work. I don't go to Rob and say, "Hey, Rob, would you like to talk about sales today or would you like to talk about marketing today?" Right? You just tell me what you want to
Thank
talk.
you for that. Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest technology shift. So if you bring it down to technology, the first is the ability to just have a natural conversation, to interrupt the conversation, to be able to just conversational the way you and I are here in this conversation, right? And that
Sure.
is possible because of what we call multimodal technology, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that's kind of the first key point is how natural and conversational it is. You just describe what you're looking for. You could be long-winded. You could be taking pauses. You could change your mind and ask about something else. The second core difference is now you have history on the user and you've seen their journey and you know what they're doing. So you know that, hey, this user created a service request an hour ago for something, or maybe this user has an open order that I need to talk to them about, or maybe they've called in from
Mhm.
multiple instances of the same problem. You have all of this context that you're using to assist the user. And again, this is so different from what we have today. Like we had a Verizon shipment lost not too long ago, and not to name any specific company, just an example, right? And every time I would call them, they would start the conversation. "So, what are you calling about?" I'm like, "I called an hour ago for the same issue," right? And
Mhm.
the fact that AI can process so much context, so much information on who the user is, what they've been up to, what their experience is, allows the experience to be dramatically more personalized, more context driven. So I would say, in terms of technology, a much more conversational, fluid, human-like technology, and the ability to know so much more about the user and their journey, and take all of that to drive all sorts of automation and the ability to create better service requests and what have you is really what's the game-changing ability here.
So, do you think that user adoption will increase with this technology? Do you think that these people are trusting AI more when they're actually able to have a conversation with it, right? Like a verbal conversation rather than, typing back and forth?
Yeah, there's definitely something about hearing a voice on the other end that kind of settles you a little bit, especially if what you have on the other end already knows who you are, what you're trying to do, is knowledgeable, intelligent, personalized, right? So there's definitely an element of trust, and one of the principles we've also believed in is never like dead end a user, right? So if you feel like they're still stressed about something, you can sense that sentiment and escalate them to a person. Those are the little micro behaviors that just build trust with the user.
So, why don't you talk for a minute about how Rezolve.ai is using this technology? Let's talk for the tech crowd for a second. What's happening behind the curtain is pretty wild. The system is listening. It is interpreting the intent. It is categorizing, and it's creating a structured ticket all in seconds. There's no menus, no buttons, no press one for this, press two for that. It's just a natural conversation. And so, how hard is that to implement something like that into a company? Because let's be honest, nobody says my endpoint is unresponsive. They say my laptop's losing its mind. You know what I mean? That's how they're going to talk.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. So, as I said, we've been working on this for a couple of years. One of the key, as I said, the core tenet for us was to bring it as close to what a human to human, and not just a human who's a trainee that has just joined 2 days ago, but a knowledgeable person who
Sure.
knows what you're dealing with. It's, by the way, that's the other thing. Variability is huge, right? So when you call into a call center, you get to people who have been there for multiple years and know everything, and you get to someone who's just started and
Sure.
doesn't really know the detail. And if you have a complex issue, you can tell, right, that you're struggling to get that resolved. AI takes that variability away. So I digress. Coming to what we were talking about. So if you look at the spectrum of competencies that a platform needs to provide AI-driven voice support, it breaks it into what I would say a few technical capabilities and a few human capabilities. And it's important
Sure.
how you bring all of that together to, to deliver that experience that you were just describing with the ability to listen and understand and then act on something. So if I look at the technical capabilities, you need what we call multimodal voice. You need to be able to understand what the user is saying. You need to be able to understand it in the language that they're talking in. So we support all sorts of languages in our platform. And you need to be able to transfer them to a human when they have something that needs escalation to a human. You need to be able to understand all of the context and the prior journey of the user, so who they are, what they have been up to. Maybe not in the voice channel, but maybe they sent an email 2 hours ago, right? And you need to be having a common AI layer that looks at the user's journey across the organization. You need to be able to connect to how to help the user, whether it's answering a question from maybe a knowledge article somewhere, or maybe it's actually doing something on their behalf, like resetting their password or creating a service request, right? So these are all technical capabilities that you want in your platform. And then there are what I would say you would y- you at the end of the day, your phone channel also represents your brand. It represents your organization.
Sure. It really
It
does.
represents the front line of your company. So you want it to be on brand. You want it to have the personality of how your people speak, right? Not just some random tech somewhere. You want it to be helpful the way you want your people to be helpful. You want it to know when to escalate it to a person, because maybe that's how your people work. They bring in a supervisor or a level 2 person when needed, right?
That's right.
And you want all of the tech capabilities and all of these human capabilities to evolve over time. So they're not static, they're not frozen in time. Your policies change, you might be having a return policy that was 60 days ago and is now 15 days, right? And so on and so forth. And these things, you need an AI that does not need quote unquote new development every time, because your business is changing fast. And I think those are all, I would say, capabilities that if you do them well in a platform, they deliver an incredible experience to the end user, and something that is super flexible and powerful internally to manage for the organization. And that is really the benchmark that we were holding ourselves to for the last couple of years when we were trying to build and launch this platform.
So, what's impressed me the most so far isn't the novelty, it's quite literally the efficiency. Tickets are created faster, they're created cleaner, and with better context than I could ever put it on my own. And the result is happier employees, fewer repeat calls, and IT teams and HR teams and other support teams that can actually focus on solving these issues instead of just logging them. So, what kind of reactions have you seen from the early adopters? Like, how is this changing life for support teams and the people calling in?
Yeah. First of all, everyone is thankful that they don't have to be on the phone. I think that's probably I would say, the least interesting part of what a IT support technician or an HR case manager or even a customer experience person, customer support person wants to do, right? They
Sure.
want to help their users, but they don't necessarily want to have be on the call all day long. I mean, it is stressful, it is busy, it is So there's definitely a level of relief just from that. Um, Taking that a step further, I think the ability to offer better hours for support is kind of the next thing people are happy to see. So, hey, I
I can
used
see
to
that.
be 9 to 5, but now my users can call in and get some self-help and support after hours, any time of the day, 3 a.m. if they're trying to work on a PowerPoint presentation for their 7 a.m. meeting, right? I hope not, but if they are. Um, then I think that's kind of the availability is kind of the next thing. The third thing that I think people are beginning to take advantage of is the multilingual aspect. So we used to have, especially for global organizations or organizations that are just in a few countries where you would need to have regional kind of support set up in all of those different
Sure.
environments. And I think what using a multilingual platform like VoiceIQ does is you can now talk to the user in German or Italian or Spanish, create that service request in those languages, understand what they're saying, give them some self-help, do what they need to do, or create that ticket and route it to the right person who can help them, all without having to worry about how you're going to interact with them in whatever their preferred language is. By the way, you don't even have to say that, hey, press one for Italian and two for German, right? You just start speaking in the language that you speak, and the platform switches to the user's preferred language. The cool thing is your
That's pretty cool.
knowledge
I
might
like
be in
that too.
English, right? It is, and your
Yeah,
knowledge
yeah.
might be in English, and the user might be speaking some other language, and you can still take that English language content and respond to them in whatever language of they're speaking. So some pretty interesting capabilities. So the ability to be multilingual, again, huge win for the support teams. Then the next thing is just the quality of information that comes in. So one of the things, for example, we built in Voice IQ really well is the ability to triage and follow up and ask better questions. So if you came and said, "Hey, my laptop's not working," it's going to say, I'm sorry to hear that. What's not working, right? Is it not turning
Mhm.
on? Is it like too slow, right? And it will dialogue you through all of those types of things. It will also try to understand what's your urgency, how long it's been going on. So by the time it gets to a support person on the other side, there's enough depth and detail that you can actually resolve these things, right? And it's not like someone just created a ticket like my laptop's not working and the technician's like, what am I going to do with this, right? I now have to go back to the user. I need to ask them more questions. It's wasting my time. It's making our SLA look worse because now I can't resolve it that quickly. So it has all these cascading impacts on how service actually works. So the ability to be more complete is another key value proposition. So I would say, and then for the user, the total call time drops dramatically. So instead of
I
being
bet.
like, here's how you authenticate and here's how you press all the IVR options, you've now described your issue. You have been very quickly authenticated, and you have been able to create a service request. If that's what you were there to do for within like less than a minute, it's a much faster response and a much faster interaction. So if you put all of that together, the ability to have better hours, the ability to not have to scale up during peak hours, the ability to do multilingual, the ability to have shorter calls, the ability to route those tickets and calls to the right team because you have more complete, more structured information. Those are all huge wins for any support organization.
So what do you wish more support leaders understood about adopting AI-driven voice?
I think there's three, I would say three big things I wish the organization would or everyone would start to think about, right? One is the
Mhm.
technology is already there, right? I think it's not if not used it and if you've not interacted with it, I would definitely encourage everyone to experiment with it. I'm happy to showcase it to people, or I'm sure you can, Rob. But the point is the technology for how to do a very natural human-like voice interaction that is night and day from the traditional IVRs of the world is already here. And I think that we should just pay attention to how quickly that is moving ahead. The second is, I think if you've been in the space, you're all used to thinking about a traditional approach to how you build quote unquote call deflection. So you select this option, you do this status, right?
Mhm.
We need to rethink that experience and that journey. And I think we need to think about how do you design a new experience which is much more fluid, much more conversational. Again, companies like ourselves that are doing it are obviously we understand it and are happy to help. But in general, the concept of moving away from linear structured IVR type flows to a very fluid, very dynamic, much more intelligent, much more personalized user experience is important. Um, the third thing is how do you then begin to apply it in practice? How do you do small pilots, do some win? How do you not try to boil the ocean where this is like a 3-year roadmap? Because you know what? First of all, that's too long to show results. And it
Sure,
really,
it is.
technology 3 years from now would look nothing like what it does today. This is a very rapidly evolving space. So the ability to do quick wins, demonstrate and learn, move on to maybe a organization-wide and then an enterprise-wide, adoption. Those are really the way I would wish everyone would start to think about how to appreciate what the technology does, how to design a new experience, and then how to develop some quick wins.
So, without giving too much away, where do you see this technology going in the next year or two? I know you just talked a little bit about the future and the rapid evolution of AI and voice AI. So, how close do you think we are to full voice-driven resolution?
I think we're not limited by the ability of technology now. We're now limited by our ability to connect it into the right systems, to build the right controls, to build the right trust, to build the right pathways, and so on. The core technology already does resolutions pretty well, right? You can ask it all sorts of things, and it will do those for you. The question is, if someone says, I need to reset my password, have we thought through how to build the right level of trust and authentication and security and alignment with the organizational policies and governance to that, right? Those are the things that I think people need to begin to begin to put the focus on, because the core technology can do all of those things. It can send you a one-time password. It can send you a text message. It can, it can,
Yeah.
it can resolve your issue literally in seconds. So being able to connect to your workflows with the right controls and governance, I think, is kind of one aspect of it. The core technology itself, I also do see evolving. And I think the area where the core technology itself is going to evolve is rather than a single point interaction in one channel, it becomes part of users' touch points across the organization, and it becomes part of their journey. So I might have been doing some browsing on the website, and then I decided to call in for some order, right? Being able to connect all of these capabilities into a even more personalized, more intelligent, and more context-driven is, I think, where the core platform is going to go. And obviously, the other more practical aspect of the platform is just building more automation out of the box in the platform. So the idea is that at some point today, if we do, let's say, an X% call deflection, how do we make it 2x, 3x, 4x, and eventually get it as close to 100%, right? I think that is the journey, I think, over a year or two.
So, what are the early warning signs that a company's support system is falling behind, and how can a voice first help desk, kind of help them get around that curve?
Yeah, every call center or every service desk looks at a set of metrics, right? And the metrics people look at is your hold times, your response times, your first call resolution, your mean time to resolution, all of those metrics. Um, you kind of know when they're falling behind because those metrics tell that to you. They've always been there, right? It's just that the ability to change that is hard. So we've all experienced instances where we've been on hold for 30 minutes. We've all experienced where we got to someone who just didn't know how to help us. We called because my son has this school thing. It's a tech
Mhm.
platform for his school that needs him to call in. They're open till 5 Eastern, right? He gets out of school at 6 Eastern. There's no way for him to
Mhm.
ever be able to interact, right? So
Exactly.
being
Yeah.
able to being knowing the limitations of the platform around hours of support, languages of support, the hold times, the how often the user has to be calling back, like, is your first call resolution good? The average duration of the call. These are all metrics that tell us when we're falling behind. I would say pretty much 100% of the voice-based channels that are out there are actually not taking advantage of the newer platform. There's the technology itself is very new, so no fault of anyone, but it's here now, and we should take advantage of that as quickly as possible because the user satisfaction impacts are huge.
Absolutely. Well, Sorb, thanks for breaking all that down. This is the kind of innovation that actually makes everyday work easier, not harder. And thanks to everyone who joined live. And if you want to see how voice first AI ticketing works in action, grab a quick discovery call with us. You can find that at our website, www.rezolve.ai. That's resolve spelled with a Z. I promise no hold music and no phone trees, just real answers fast. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Sorb.